First contact's feline factor. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of Harmony 7, watching the massive Virixie trading vessel dock with an impossible grace for its size. Her cat Apollo, a sleek Russian blue with piercing green eyes, sat beside her with his tail twitching, a telltale sign he was tracking something she couldn't see. "You're supposed to be in my quarters," she muttered, though there was no real reproach in her voice. After 6 months aboard the joint human-alien station, everyone had grown used to Apollo's uncanny ability to escape any containment. The Virixie ambassador had even called it charmingly human, that persistent refusal to follow simple containment protocols. The station's soft blue lighting flickered briefly, something that had been happening with increasing frequency over the past week. Chief Engineer Martinez blamed it on integration issues between human and alien power systems, but Sarah wasn't so sure. She'd noticed Apollo's strange behavior coinciding with each occurrence. "Commander Chen," the station's AI announced, "Ambassador Crickstall requests your presence in Diplomatic Suite 3. They specifically mentioned your companion would be welcome." Sarah raised an eyebrow. The Virixie were notorious for their fastidious nature and general distaste for Earth animals. For them to specifically request Apollo's presence was unprecedented. "Acknowledged," she replied, scooping up Apollo, who immediately began purring. "Though I suspect there's a story here." The diplomatic suite was already crowded when she arrived. Ambassador Crickstall's crystalline form shimmered with anxious colors, predominantly worried amber with streaks of desperate green. 3 other Virixie stood nearby, their forms similarly agitated. What caught Sarah's attention, however, was the state of the room. The normally pristine suite looked like it had hosted a zero-gravity party. Delicate Virixie artifacts floated mysteriously away from their display cases, only to drift back down when approached. The station's artificial gravity was working perfectly everywhere else. Apollo's purring stopped abruptly. His ears flattened against his head, and his eyes fixed on something in the corner that Sarah couldn't see. "Commander," Crickstall's translator rendered their harmonics into English, "we have a situation that your Earth knowledge might uniquely qualify you to address. We are experiencing anomalies." As if on cue, a priceless Virixie meditation crystal lifted itself from its pedestal and began spinning slowly in the air. Apollo's tail puffed to twice its size. "We detected no technological failures," another Virixie, whose name tag identified them as Chief Science Officer Zix, added. "No gravitational anomalies. No energy signatures we can identify. But—" They paused, their crystalline form clouding with embarrassment. "We noticed your companion species seems aware of something." Sarah watched as Apollo crouched low, tracking movement only he could see. She'd seen this behavior before, back on Earth when he hunted insects or laser pointer dots. But here, in a sterile space station. "Ambassador," she said carefully, "I believe you're suggesting my cat can see something your sensors can't." "Precisely." Crickstall's form brightened with relief. "We have similar records from 3 other stations where Earth felines are present, objects moving without cause, power fluctuations, and in each case, your species' small predators exhibit awareness of patterns." As they spoke, Apollo suddenly launched himself across the room with devastating precision. His paw seemed to connect with empty air, but the impact produced a high-pitched squeal that had all the Virixie vibrating in alarm. A shimmer became visible briefly, like heat waves on a summer day, before disappearing entirely. The floating meditation crystal dropped back onto its pedestal. By the first light, Zix whispered, their crystalline form almost white with shock. "We've never been able to make contact with them before." Sarah looked between her cat, now calmly cleaning his paw as if nothing extraordinary had happened, and the astonished aliens. "I think," she said slowly, "you'd better tell me exactly what's going on here." Crickstall's form shifted to a deep blue of serious intent. "Commander, what your companion just encountered is something we've been tracking for decades. We call them void dancers, energy beings that can phase through most matter and avoid all known detection methods. They've been responsible for countless technological failures, diplomatic incidents, and, they paused meaningfully, the complete failure of 3 space stations. Apollo chirped, batting at another invisible entity. This time, Sarah thought she caught a glimpse of something, a twist in the air, like a soap bubble catching light. Until now, Six added, we had no way to even prove they existed, let alone counter them. But your species, they gestured at Apollo with a crystalline appendage. You brought natural predators adapted to hunting beings beyond normal perception. Sarah felt a smile tugging at her lips as she watched Apollo stalk another invisible target. Humanity's first major contribution to galactic civilization might just be their housekits. The absurdity of it was perfectly human. Ambassador, she said, I believe we need to call an emergency meeting of the station's council. And she glanced at Apollo, who had cornered something in the suite's far side. We're going to need more cats. From high in the corner of the diplomatic suite, unnoticed by anyone, another void dancer watched the proceedings with growing concern. The hunters had finally arrived. The hunters' secret, the emergency council meeting of Harmony 7, was anything but harmonious. Representatives from 12 species crowded into the circular chamber, their voices, clicks, and harmonic resonances creating a cacophony of concern. At the center of it all sat Apollo, calmly grooming himself on the main presentation podium, as if he hadn't just appended galactic security protocols. You expect us to believe. Ambassador Nex of the Crinkly Collective buzzed through their translator, that the solution to our long-standing technological disturbances is to fill our stations with primitive Earth predators. Sarah Chen stood beside the holographic display, showing footage from the diplomatic suite incident. The evidence is quite clear, Ambassador. The void dancers, as the Virixi call them, have been affecting our systems for years, and Earth cats can detect and interact with them. Apollo's ears suddenly perked up. The entire chamber fell silent as he focused on something near the environmental controls. Before anyone could react, he bounded across the room in 3 graceful leaps, sailed over the Crinkly delegation, and pounced. The impact was followed by a now familiar squeal and a brief shimmer in the air. The chamber's lighting, which had been subtly flickering, stabilized immediately. Ambassador Crixtal's crystalline form pulsed with vindication. That is the 4th confirmed intervention in the past 3 hours. Chief Science Officer Zix has been collecting data. Zix stepped forward, their form projecting detailed holographic charts. While we cannot detect the entities directly, we can track their effects. Power fluctuations, gravitational anomalies, data corruption, all cease immediately following feline intervention. Moreover, we've discovered something fascinating about their hunting patterns. The hologram shifted to show a 3-dimensional map of the station. Red dots indicated where Apollo had encountered the void dancers. They clustered around critical systems, power distribution nodes, data centers, and most tellingly, the quantum communication array. They're not random troublemakers, Sarah realized aloud. They're targeting our infrastructure. But why now? Why are we only seeing this pattern emerge? A soft chime indicated a new arrival. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the station's xenobiologist, hurried into the chamber with a tablet displaying rapidly scrolling data. I might have an answer to that, Commander. I've been analyzing the quantum resonance patterns from our recent encounters, comparing them to historical data. She tapped her tablet, adding a new layer to the holographic display. The void dancers aren't just energy beings, they're evolving. The patterns we're seeing suggest they're developing more complex behaviors, learning to affect our technology in increasingly sophisticated ways. And if my calculations are correct, they're actually feeding off our power systems. The chamber erupted in alarmed discussions. Sarah noticed Apollo had taken up position near the main power conduit, his tail twitching rhythmically. She'd seen that behavior before, a predator waiting for prey to emerge. There's more. Elena continued, her voice cutting through the chaos. I believe they've always been present in our space stations and ships, but at much lower numbers. Something changed recently that's causing their population to explode. Crystal's form darkened with realization. The new quantum fold drives. We've been implementing them across the galaxy over the past solar cycle. They create micro-fissures in space-time, perfectly safe for organic life. But perfect entry points for energy beings, Sarah finished. We've been inadvertently holding the door open for them. Apollo suddenly tensed, and every alien in the chamber instinctively backed away. This time, multiple shimmers appeared near the power conduit. 4 void dancers, moving with clear purpose. The Russian blue launched into action, but even his remarkable reflexes could only catch one. The others dispersed, leaving behind a trail of failing systems. Emergency lights flashed as power fluctuated across multiple decks. Sarah's communicator crackled with reports of similar incidents throughout the station. "They're coordinating," Elena whispered, staring at her readings. "They've never done that before." Ambassador Nex's wings buzzed with agitation. How many of these Earth predators would we need to secure a station this size? Sarah did some quick calculations. Given Apollo's effective range and the station's layout, at least 30 cats. And we'd need to train them specifically for this task. Train them? Several voices asked simultaneously. A slight smile crossed Sarah's face. Oh yes, as effective as Apollo is, he's just a naturally gifted amateur. Imagine what we could accomplish with cats specifically bred and trained for void dancer detection and intervention. The chamber's main lights flickered ominously, and somewhere in the distance, they heard another otherworldly squeal followed by Apollo's triumphant meow. "Commander Chen," Crixtel's translator rendered their harmonics with unmistakable urgency. "How quickly can Earth provide us with these defenders?" Sarah watched as Apollo trotted back to the podium, looking immensely pleased with himself. "That depends, Ambassador. How serious is the Council about establishing the galaxy's first feline defense force?" In the shadows above, more void dancers gathered, their ethereal forms twisting with what might have been concern. The prey had finally found their predator, and the hunt was about to change dramatically. Operation Whiskers. "I never thought I'd be requisitioning laser pointers as critical military equipment," Sarah muttered, reviewing the supply manifest for what had been officially designated as Operation Whiskers. The temporary training facility on Harmony 7's lower deck had been transformed into what looked like a cross between a military command center and an upscale cat cafe. 30 specially selected cats from Earth's top feline training programs lounged, played, and practiced in custom-built environmental zones. Each wore a lightweight collar equipped with quantum sensors designed by the Virixi, the first technology capable of tracking a cat's interaction with void dancers. Elena Rodriguez approached with a tablet displaying real-time training metrics. "You should see these numbers, Commander. The Russian blues are showing a 92% success rate in detection, while the Maine Coons are excelling at actual intervention. But the real surprises are the ragdolls." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "The ragdolls? Aren't they usually known for being laid back?" "That's what makes them perfect," Elena grinned. "They're patient enough to stake out a position for hours, and their size gives them an advantage in direct confrontations. Watch this." She gestured toward a nearby training zone, where a massive blue-pointed ragdoll named Duchess sat perfectly still, eyes fixed on seemingly empty space. The quantum sensors on her collar pulsed steadily, indicating void dancer activity. Suddenly, 3 shimmers appeared near a power node. Before they could affect the systems, Duchess launched her considerable bulk into action. Her movement was surprisingly graceful for a cat her size, and in seconds, all 3 shimmers had dissipated with the now familiar squeals. "Impressive," Sarah acknowledged. "But are we making progress understanding what these things actually are? We can't keep playing cosmic whack-a-mole forever." Chief Science Officer Zix materialized beside them, their crystalline forms cycling through analytical patterns. "We've made several breakthrough observations. The void dancers appear to be fourth-dimensional energy constructs, capable of partially phasing into our reality. They don't just feed on power, they're attempting to transform it. Transform it into what? Sarah asked, watching as Apollo supervised a group of younger cats in training exercises. Her cat had taken to his role as senior instructor with surprising dedication. We believe they're trying to create stable quantum bridges between dimensions, Zix explained. Each power fluctuation is an attempt to tear a permanent hole in spacetime. If they succeed, they could bring through something bigger. Elena finished, her face paling. Much bigger. As if to emphasize the point, alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. The lights in the training facility flickered violently, and every cat simultaneously focused on the central power distribution hub. Multiple signatures. Elena called out, reading the sensor data. Biggest swarm we've seen yet. Sarah watched in amazement as 30 cats moved with coordinated precision that would make any military commander proud. The ragdolls took up defensive positions around critical systems. Maine Coons positioned themselves for interception, and the Russian blues began systematic sweep patterns. The air filled with ethereal squeals and flashing shimmers as the cats engaged their dimensional adversaries. But something was different this time. The void dancers weren't retreating. Energy readings are off the scale, Zix reported, their form pulsing with concern. They're trying to combine their efforts. A sphere of distorted space began to form above the power hub, growing larger by the second. The cats' attacks seemed to pass right through it. They're adapting, Elena realized, learning from each encounter. This is what we were afraid of. Sarah's mind raced through options. The cat's natural abilities weren't enough anymore. They needed an edge. Her eyes fell on the experimental quantum sensors. Zix, the collar sensors, can they be modified to emit the same energy frequency they're detecting? The Virixi's form brightened with understanding. Yes, we could create a resonance effect, amplifying the cat's natural ability to interact with the void dancers. Do it, Sarah ordered. Elena, get every cat equipped with the modified sensors. Quick as you can. The next few minutes were organized chaos as they modified and distributed the enhanced collars. The sphere of distorted space had grown to nearly 2 meters in diameter, and the air hummed with otherworldly energy. Apollo was the first to test the new equipment. He approached the anomaly cautiously, then struck with lightning precision. This time, his paw connected solidly with the distortion. The sphere shuddered and began to collapse. One by one, the other cats joined in, their enhanced abilities allowing them to directly affect the void dancers' combined form. The sphere imploded with a thunderous crack, sending shockwaves of quantum energy rippling through the station. When the dust settled, the power system stabilized, and the sensors showed no remaining void dancer signatures. 30 cats sat cleaning themselves nonchalantly, as if they hadn't just prevented a potential dimensional catastrophe. Well, Elena said, checking her readings, I think we can call this a successful field test of the enhanced equipment. Sarah watched as Apollo sauntered back to his favorite observation post, tail held high. Send word to Earth. Tell them we need to scale up production of the quantum collars. And she smiled, we're going to need a lot more cats. In the quantum space between dimensions, the void dancers regrouped, contemplating this new development. Their prey had become predators, and the game was changing fast. Predator Protocol. The quantum alert sounded through Harmony 7's corridors 3 seconds before the power grid destabilized. Sarah Chen was already moving, Apollo at her heels, as emergency protocols engaged across the station. In the 6 weeks since Operation Whiskers began, the void dancers had become increasingly sophisticated in their attacks. Status report, she commanded, entering the newly established Feline Defense Force Command Center. Holographic displays showed cat teams deploying across all 12 levels of the station. Elena Rodriguez's fingers flew across multiple interfaces, multiple breach points, Commander. They're targeting the quantum communication array again. But she paused, frowning at the data. This is different. The energy signatures are more concentrated. They're learning to shield themselves from the quantum sensors. Six added, their crystalline form pulsing with analytical patterns. Even the enhanced collars are having trouble getting clear readings. On the main display, red dots indicating Void Dancer activity formed complex geometric patterns around critical systems. It wasn't the chaos of previous attacks. This was coordinated, strategic. Look at the formation, Sarah noted, pointing to the display. They're creating a containment barrier around each target system, trying to keep our teams from reaching them. Apollo suddenly tensed, his enhanced collar emitting a high-pitched warning tone. The lights in the command center flickered, and a shimmer appeared directly above the main quantum processor. "They're here," Elena shouted, but Apollo was already moving. He launched himself at the shimmer, only to pass straight through it. The Russian blue landed gracefully, looking almost offended that his attack had failed. "New defense mechanism," Zix observed, rapidly recording data. They found a way to phase shift at a frequency our current equipment can't affect. Sarah watched as more cats arrived in the command center, all failing to make contact with the increasingly visible Void Dancer. The air around the quantum processor began to distort, forming familiar patterns. "They're starting another dimensional breach," Elena reported. "Bigger than last time. Energy readings are off the charts." Sarah's mind raced. The Void Dancers had adapted to their quantum-enhanced attacks, but perhaps that adaptation could be turned against them. "Zix, the phase shift they're using. Can we track its specific frequency?" The Virixi's form brightened. "Yes, the sensors are picking up a clear quantum signature, even though we can't affect it." "And the collars, how quickly can we modify them to match that frequency?" "Commander," Elena interrupted, "if we match their frequency exactly, we might inadvertently help them stabilize the breach. The risks are less than letting them tear open a dimensional portal in our command center." Sarah finished. "Zix, modifying now. But Commander, we'll only get one attempt. Matching their frequency will burn out the collar's quantum matrix." Sarah looked at Apollo, who sat watching the growing distortion with predatory focus. "One attempt might be all we need. Do it." Zix's crystalline appendages manipulated the quantum controls on Apollo's collar. The device hummed with increasing intensity as it synchronized with the Void Dancer's phase frequency. The dimensional breach had grown to fill half the command center, its edges rippling with otherworldly energy. Through its transparent surface, Sarah caught glimpses of something vast and impossible moving in another reality. "Frequency match in 3, 2, 1. Apollo didn't wait for the countdown to finish. The moment his collar aligned with the Void Dancer's frequency, he struck. This time, his attack connected. The impact sent quantum shockwaves through the command center, disrupting every electronic system momentarily. The breach collapsed with explosive force, taking the Void Dancers with it. Apollo's collar sparked and went dark, but the Russian blue merely sat down and began cleaning his paw, radiating smugness. "All breach points are collapsing," Elena reported, checking the station-wide sensors. "Whatever they were trying to bring through, it's gone." Sarah knelt beside Apollo, scratching behind his ears. "Good work, Professor," she said, using his unofficial title among the younger cats. "But they'll be back, and this trick won't work twice." "Perhaps it doesn't need to," Zix suggested, their form shimmering with excitement. "The data we collected during the frequency match, it's given us our first real understanding of their dimensional structure. We might be able to develop a more permanent solution." "Commander," Elena called out, "incoming transmission from Earth. The Council has approved expansion of the Feline Defense Force. The first wave of graduated teams is deploying to stations across the galaxy." Sarah smiled, watching Apollo resume his position overseeing the command center. Humanity's cats were about to take their place as the galaxy's premier dimensional security force. The Void Dancers had started this game, but Earth's smallest predators would finish it. And somewhere in the quantum spaces between realities, the Void Dancers contemplated their next move, aware that the rules of engagement had changed forever. The new guards, 1 year after the establishment of the Feline Defense Force, Harmony 7 had become the galaxy's premier training facility for dimensional security operations. Sarah Chen stood in her office, now officially designated as FDF Command, watching ships arrive from across known space. Each vessel carried carefully selected cats and their human handlers, ready to begin their training in what had become known as the most elite security force in the galaxy. Latest statistics from the Galactic Council, Elena announced, entering with her ever-present tablet. Void Dancer incursions are down 94% across all monitored stations. The remaining 6% are handled so efficiently by local FDF teams that most civilian populations don't even notice them anymore. Sarah nodded, watching Apollo supervising a training session in the courtyard below. Her once ordinary house cat now held the rank of Chief Training Officer, responsible for evaluating every feline recruit that came through the program. And the new defense grid? Sarah asked, turning to where Zix was calibrating a bank of quantum monitors. The Virixi's crystalline form sparkled with pride. The combination of our technology and feline sensory capabilities has revolutionized dimensional security. We can now detect and track Void Dancer activity across multiple realities simultaneously. On the main display, a three-dimensional map showed FDF teams stationed throughout the galaxy. Green dots indicated active cat patrols, while blue markers represented successfully contained breaches. The number of red alert indicators had dropped to nearly zero. "Commander," Elena said, her voice taking on a more serious tone, "we've detected something unusual in the quantum readings from the outer colonies. You might want to see this." The display shifted to show a complex pattern of energy signatures. Unlike the chaotic nature of early Void Dancer activities, these movements were precise, almost diplomatic. "They're trying to communicate," Zix observed, their form pulsing with excitement. "The pattern matches known first contact protocols." Sarah watched as Apollo perked up, his attention drawn to a shimmer forming in the corner of her office. Instead of attacking, he sat calmly, tail wrapped neatly around his paws. The shimmer coalesced into a more definite form, still translucent, but clearly intentionally visible. "Well," Sarah said softly, "this is new." The Void Dancer's form rippled in what they had learned to recognize as their version of language. Zix's translation matrix hummed to life. "They say they wish to negotiate," the Virixi translated. "The emergence of the Feline Defense Force has impressed them. They're proposing a cooperative agreement." Elena's eyes widened. "Are they suggesting what I think they're suggesting?" The Void Dancer produced another series of ripples. "They believe their ability to traverse dimensional boundaries, combined with our cat's natural abilities and our technology, could create something unprecedented, a true multi-dimensional peacekeeping force." Sarah looked at Apollo, who was now engaging in what appeared to be a complex game of quantum tag with the Void Dancer. "From adversaries to allies," she mused. "That would be quite a shift." "The Council will need to be consulted," Elena pointed out. "This could change everything we've built over the past year. Or enhance it," Sarah countered. "Think about it. We've already proven that cats can interact with their dimension. If we can establish proper communication and cooperation." She paused, watching as more Void Dancers appeared, each engaging respectfully with the cats in the training yard below. Zix's form brightened with revelation. "We could expand our understanding of dimensional physics exponentially. The technological applications alone would be secondary," Sarah interrupted gently, "to the diplomatic implications. Humanity's first major contribution to galactic society wasn't just providing security. It was facilitating first contact with an entirely new form of life." Apollo trotted back to her side, looking pleased with himself. The Void Dancers gathered in formation, their collective shimmer forming patterns that the translation matrix interpreted as formal greeting protocols. "Commander," Elena said, checking her readings, "similar scenes are playing out at FDF stations across the galaxy. They're not just reaching out here. They're initiating synchronized contact everywhere." Sarah straightened her uniform. "Well then, as the ranking FDF officer, I suppose I should officially welcome our new dimensional associates." She glanced down at Apollo with a smile. "Unless the chief training officer has any objections." Apollo's purr rumbled through the office as the void dancers drew closer, their forms now clearly showing signs of deliberate communication attempts. The cats throughout the station maintained their vigilance, but their posture had shifted from defensive to curious. "Send word to the council," Sarah ordered. Tell them that humanity's cats have done it again. They've turned potential enemies into friends, simply by being themselves." As diplomatic protocols engaged across the station, Sarah Chen couldn't help but marvel at the irony. In all of humanity's dreams of joining galactic society, no one had ever imagined that their greatest contribution would come wrapped in fur, armed with whiskers, and prone to knocking things off high shelves. The age of feline diplomacy had begun, and the galaxy would never be quite the same.